On today's show, the Heat will no doubt be in on Kevin Durant if he asks for a trade from the Nets, but even their best trade package might not stack up to others from around the league. We play fake GM and go through some fake trades next. Plus, the latest on PJ Tucker and why it looks less and less likely that he'll return to Miami next season. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on all things Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, here solo without my usual co-host David Ramil this Monday morning. He will be joining me later this afternoon after the Nikola Jovic press conference at FTX Arena today. We will have the latest on Jovic and Pat Riley's comments for you later tonight. However, you may be joining us on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. All right, I'll get to Marc Stein's latest report on PJ Tucker, which doesn't sound good for the Heat in a minute here, but I want to start things by just taking a different perspective on the Kevin Durant situation than you're going to hear from most other local outlets, because most of what I'm seeing and reading and hearing, it takes the perspective from the Miami Heat and what the Heat should be willing to put into a potential Kevin Durant trade package and if that's going to be good enough for Brooklyn and all of these things. What should the Heat be willing to give up for Kevin Durant? But that's just not how it works. Because in these situations, it's the team with the star. It's the team with Kevin Durant that has all the offers on their table, in their inbox. And it's that team that has all the leverage. It's that team that ultimately has to make the decision. So instead, I've put together a list of fake trade packages, and I'm going to pretend to be the Nets front office and just go through those deals and see where Miami's best deal stacks up. But a quick update on how we got here first. Obviously, Kyrie Irving is unhappy with the contract that the Nets offered him. He wants more years, more guaranteed money. And the Nets are hesitant to give him that, considering that he's missed more games than he's played for them. And so can't really blame them, but that's not really our thing. That's more of their thing to worry about. This always struck me to be more of kind of a leverage game, right? These initial reports, Kyrie Irving's unhappy with his salary. Oh, well, if you don't give Kyrie the contract he wants, there's the threat of Kevin Durant leaving. All this stuff, when you read this and you hear it, you have to ask, where's the source coming from? Who's in the position of strength? Who's in a position of weakness? Whose benefit does this serve for a report like this to get leaked? And from the very beginning of all this stuff, it was very clear that all of these things favored Kyrie Irving's camp. Hey, maybe I haven't really earned the guaranteed money in the more years, but you better give it to me, or else the second best player in the NBA is going to walk. And so that's quite a bit of leverage. That is a strong leverage play. But now we're getting reports that Brooklyn's owner, Joe Tsai, has remained on the side of the front office and their stance of not wanting to give Kyrie Irving that long-term deal and that guaranteed money. And so now you're seeing some of the reporting going the other way from Brooklyn's front office saying, you know what? We don't care, man. We'll call your bluff. So now this has become less of a leverage play. And I think maybe what has started as a leverage play has turned into a real thing. Like, I don't know that Kyrie ever really wanted to leave Brooklyn, but considering how his leverage play, how the Nets have responded to that, he might be a little unhappy about that. And now what was sort of a posturing position could actually be real. Because now we're getting reports from Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania that this stuff is real, right? And once it kind of enters the Woj zone, not that everything he says is gospel, but it makes me look a little much harder at the entire situation, right? So from here, now we have reports that Kevin Durant could really be on the move. He hasn't spoken to the Brooklyn's front office in weeks. That's not a great sign Okay? My friend Logan Murdoch at The Ringer recently reported that Durant feels that the Nets front office, quote, didn't grow to understand Kyrie, which seems like an impossible task anyway to try to understand that guy. But if they didn't at least attempt to create that bridge, to build that bridge between front office and player, I could see how Kevin Durant is upset that they never really tried to be on the side of Kyrie Irving. That kind of feels like, with the reporting around this stuff, that they're sort of anti-Kyrie. And if I'm Kevin Durant, hey, that's my buddy, you know? Like, you never grew to understand him, and I'm always going to take my friend's side over ownership's side, right? Think about when you're in a workplace. How often, if you have a buddy who's a fellow employee, how often are you taking your boss's side over your friend's side, even if your friend kind of screwed you over in a group project or report or something like that? You're usually still going to take the employee side. It's just sort of how stuff works. So now it's looking less like strategically leaked leverage plays and more like there's a real possibility that both of these guys could leave Brooklyn. So with that said, it's time to take these things seriously. And if the Nets are really going to field offers for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Now, David and I have talked over the last week about Kyrie Irving and that potential option for Miami. We will talk more about that during the week, especially since Kyrie's opt-in date is Wednesday, and that's going to give us a much bigger sense of what's going on with the Kyrie Irving situation than anything else, whether or not he opts in or opts out. But I want to focus on Kevin Durant here because Brian Windhorst said this on ESPN the other day. The Godfather move is to just let the Kyrie Irving situation play itself out, let him go to the Lakers or wherever he ends up, and then go after the biggest of fish in Kevin Durant, right? That is the ultimate Pat Riley move. Now, whether or not they can do that is a different situation. And that's why I want to get to the fake trades, okay? Because it's at this point that it's up to Brooklyn to decide where they want to go. Because if I'm Brooklyn, first of all, and Kyrie Irving leaves, let's say he opts out, or you trade him after he opts in, and you do, or he opts out and does a sign and trade, or signs with the Lakers, or whatever it is, he leaves. Then I think if I'm Brooklyn, I want to trade Kevin Durant, depending on what I get back for Kyrie Irving. If I'm not getting back enough to make me a contender still with Kevin Durant, then maybe I just hit that big red button and just hard reset on this whole thing and get as many assets as possible back for Durant. Because unlike Kyrie, whose trade value is completely plummeted right now, and you could probably get him for 20 cents on the dollar, for Kevin Durant, you're going to get a haul. This is the second best player in the league, still on the outer edge of his prime, who makes you an immediate contender. And he's on a 4-year deal, right? This guy's still under contract. So he could basically just go anywhere. Any team could trade for him. Any team could trade for him. So I don't know where Miami's trade package stacks up. We know that they're going to be in on this. But before we get to that and some of these fake trades, I want to tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, back here with Locked On Heat. Let's carve into some of these fake trade ideas. So here's how this is going to work. I am taking the perspective of the Brooklyn Nets front office, all right? I'm putting my GM hat on. Kevin Durant comes to me. Hey, Kyrie's gone. I want to be traded. All right. It makes sense for you. It makes sense for us because just Kevin Durant, even with Ben Simmons back, without Kyrie, without a real good return, because we don't think we're getting that from the Kyrie deal, we just don't figure to be contenders, and we don't have the assets to rebuild around you, right? So let's hit the red button. Let's hit the hard reset. Let's look to rebuild around a blue chip young player, picks, other young players, all these things. So if I'm the Nets, that's what I'm looking for. I am looking for a young star and assets, right? The first call I'm making, and by the way, and I still have Ben Simmons under contract. And Ben Simmons, for all of the not playing and all the stuff with him last year, still an all-NBA caliber player, still a player that I feel could be a building block for the next version of this team, right? Still in his mid-20s. I'm looking to get somebody who could be the second star next to Ben Simmons and then assets back where I could rebuild around those two guys. Whoever it is, Ben Simmons and the star that I'm getting in this deal. So the first call I'm making if I'm Brooklyn is not to Miami. It's to Minnesota. And I'm asking for Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, we know that the Timberwolves will not trade Anthony Edwards. You could ask for Anthony Edwards, but it seems like that's the young guy that they're going to want to build around. He seems like their star, right? He's the guy with the ceiling. It kind of feels it feels like we kind of know what Cat is going to be, and it's going to be basically this. I don't think that Minnesota would trade Cat for Kevin Durant, but if I'm Brooklyn, I'm starting there. I'm going to ask for Cat because he's a perfect fit next to Ben Simmons, a stretch five, the way that Joel Embiid always tried to be, but never quite was. It wasn't really his strong suit. Not that Cat is better than Embiid, but I think from a fit perspective, he's definitely a better fit than Embiid was next to Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons could get Cat involved in the offense and all these things. Cat will get as many touches as he wants. I think it works. But again, if I'm Minnesota, I don't know. I like what I've got in Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns and some of these young players and all the picks that I have and what I'm building with the Timberwolves. I'd be focused more on trying to trade D'Angelo Russell, not for Kevin Durant. Obviously, you're not going to get Kevin Durant back, but trying to trade D'Lo for other pieces that fit next to Cat and Anthony Edwards. I don't know that the Timberwolves ownership is necessarily one that wants to make that quick fix, even for a guy like Kevin Durant. But I would start there if I'm Brooklyn's front office. Call Minnesota's front office. Hey, Cat, what do you think? No? Okay, moving on. If they say no, my next call is to Toronto, and I'm asking for Scottie Barnes. A package of Scottie Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., salary filler, draft picks, whatever it is. All the other things, I think the Raptors fans would rather say, you know what, we'll give you OG Anunoby, we'll give you these other guys. If I'm Brooklyn, that's not doing it for me. OG Anunoby is a nice player. I like him, but I want the blue chip young player who I could build around, and that's Scottie Barnes. He's not a great fit next to Ben Simmons, but whatever. I could trade Ben Simmons. I could do something else. I just want the guy who in Scottie Barnes looks like a potential multi-time perennial all-star, all-NBA kind of guy, rookie of the year. Give me that guy. But I would be surprised if Toronto said yes to that. They've got a young team that they really like, but if you put Kevin Durant on the Raptors, even if you have to trade Scottie Barnes and Gary Trent, you're putting him on a team with Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Precious Achiuwa, nice young players other than Scottie Barnes. That's a really, really good team, man. That team could contend for a title right away. But again, I don't know if the Raptors would do that. We've seen them go all in on a guy like Kawhi Leonard, and he only had 1 year left on his deal. So maybe they would. But I don't know that they would want to trade Scottie Barnes, even for a guy like Kevin Durant, considering how bright Scottie Barnes' future looks and how much of a win that was for Toronto, who took him at a spot where a lot of people, didn't think that they were going to take him, kind of considered that a reach, but it obviously has worked out for them. So if Toronto says no to Scottie Barnes, I think the next call is to Cleveland for Evan Mobley. I think a package of Evan Mobley and Kevin Love makes a lot of sense. It works salary-wise. Kevin Love fits next to Ben Simmons. Evan Mobley could be the future guy there. You could play like really big with Ben Simmons at point guard, Mobley at center, Kevin Love at power forward, however you want to play around with the positions. But again, I don't know that Cleveland would go in that direction, right? I mean, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, and Kevin Durant is a heck of a big three, but and that would make the Cavaliers title contenders, absolutely. But they really like Evan Mobley, and they should. He works more in line with their window. I don't know. I don't know that Cleveland would say yes to that. So keep moving on. The next call I'm making, if I'm Brooklyn, is to Utah, and I'm not asking for Rudy Gobert, even though he seems to be the guy that the Jazz want to move, because Gobert and Ben Simmons doesn't do much for me. I like Gobert, but he's not that young, blue chip kind of player who I could build around. But I'm asking for Donovan Mitchell. Hey, Donovan Mitchell seems unhappy. Rudy Gobert seems pretty chill staying in Utah, especially if you trade Donovan Mitchell. And all the reporting around those two is that they don't get along. So if you trade Donovan Mitchell and you get Kevin Durant and Rudy Gobert, maybe the best single offensive player in the NBA and the best single defensive player in the NBA, and it's not like Durant can't play awesome defense. Now you've really got something in Utah, and my sense around the Jazz is that they've never really wanted to blow this thing up completely and get out of contention. And if you're the Jazz, yeah, it's tough to sell a guy like Kevin Durant who's going from Brooklyn to potentially Salt Lake City. But you could also say, like, look, you get to pick the head coach. You pick the next head coach because Quinn Snyder's not there anymore. Or maybe that's enough to convince Quinn Snyder to just come back. I don't know. But that's what I'm asking for. Donovan Mitchell and Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, of all the deals, this is where I think Utah would say, all right, let's think about that, okay? Because obviously Donovan Mitchell is their star, but if you feel like he's not long for Utah, regardless of what you do with Rudy Gobert, and again, the sense around the league is that no matter what you do with Gobert, Donovan Mitchell's not going to be in Salt Lake City for the rest of his career. So if you really think that, then why wouldn't you just say, you know what? We're probably not going to have Kevin Durant for the rest of his career either, even though we've got him under contract. But we could get him, pair him with Gobert, compete for a championship for the next couple of years, and then flip Durant 2 years from now when he still has 2 more years left on his contract and get a bunch of assets back in return and then rebuild from there. But maybe we've won a championship by then. Right? Because no doubt Kevin Durant gives you a better chance to compete in the West than Donovan Mitchell does right now. So I would be asking for Donovan Mitchell and Bojan Bogdanovic. So that's where my next one goes. Another one I would be asking for is Phoenix. I call them, hey, DeAndre Ayton sign and trade, throw Mikal Bridges in there. I like Ayton. I think he could do more. I actually kind of like his fit next to Ben Simmons potentially. Mikal Bridges, a swing kind of wing guy, do it all, 3-and-D. He's a good fit on any roster. I don't know that I'm getting that star who can carry me to a championship back, even with Ayton. And by the way, I don't even know if Donovan Mitchell is quite there yet for Utah, but that's probably my next call. The next one after that is Memphis. And now this has been a fit that a lot of people have talked about. The Grizzlies would not want to put Jaren Jackson Jr. in the trade. The Nets would not. I don't think they'd do the trade if Jaren Jackson Jr. is not in it, right? You could throw Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Zaire Williams, Danny Green's non-guaranteed deal, all that stuff. Whatever. Memphis has a bunch of picks. You could put all that stuff in a deal. I don't think Brooklyn does it without Jaren Jackson in it. And I don't know that Memphis does it without Jaren Jackson in it. But Kevin Durant and Ja Morant and that budding rivalry with Golden State, ooh, that'd be sick. But moving on, the next call I'm making is to New Orleans for Zion Williamson. Brandon Ingram would be where the Pelicans want to start their offer. Brandon Ingram would be a better fit next to Ben Simmons. Right, but I want the guy. I want the blue chip prospect, Zion Williamson. I would bet on him getting in shape. I would bet on him being able to make the most of his potential. Where I think we kind of know what Brandon Ingram is at this point, and he's a good player, but he's not a guy that can lead you to a championship. Not really a guy that you could build around at this point, but I think Zion at best is obviously that guy. New Orleans also has a bunch of those Lakers picks still coming over. Like that's where I'm going. Give me New Orleans, Zion Williamson, a bunch of future picks. I don't know that the Pelicans do that. And if they don't, my next call, Boston, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Would Boston do that? I don't know. I really don't know if the Celtics would do that. And again, if you're Brooklyn, it's kind of exciting. It kind of feels like Jaylen Brown's value is weirdly lower than it was in the past, despite the Celtics going to the finals. Just because it feels like all of his weaknesses were put on display, and now everybody knows that he can't dribble. Marcus Smart's fine, but that's more of a salary filler kind of guy that, he's helpful, obviously, Defensive Player of the Year, but whether you think he should deserve it or not, but whatever. My next call is to Oklahoma City, and I just asked for Chet Holmgren and all of the picks that I could possibly want. Chet Holmgren, blue chip young player, second player picked in the draft, a guy that a lot of people had as the best player on their boards. Just give me him. I'll completely rebuild. Kyrie's gone. Kevin Durant's gone. I'm rebuilding around Chet Holmgren. We'll see what happens with Ben Simmons. Give me all the picks. And I just hit the hard reset button. Kevin Durant returns to the Thunder. Good story all around. Whatever. My next call is to the Lakers for Anthony Davis and the 2027 pick that they have. I don't think the Lakers do that, honestly. I think that they would rather just wait on Kyrie Irving and get him for nothing, or the mid-level exception or whatever it's going to be, trust LeBron to try to make that happen, then try to give up my second best player in Anthony Davis for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant and LeBron would be awesome together. They're probably the favorites in the Western Conference, regardless of how you build around them. But if I'm the Lakers, I'm probably not. I'd rather give up nothing for Kyrie Irving than give up my second best player for Kevin Durant and then have Kyrie, LeBron, and AD together. But After that, I'm calling San Antonio. DeJounte Murray, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, draft picks. You're not getting that blue chip player back, even though DeJounte Murray was an all-star last year, he's not really that guy that you're building around. But those are really good players, right? And you put those three and the picks around Ben Simmons, and now you've really got like a really interesting team there. I'm calling New Orleans again after that. If all of these are no's, I'm going back to New Orleans. I'm like, you know what? Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, Herb Jones, all the picks. We'll make that happen. After that, Atlanta. DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu, John Collins picks. Okay. Those are some good players. No blue chips, but DeAndre Hunter is good. Okongwu, a lot of people are really high on him. John Collins is a good player. You could potentially flip him for other good players down the line. Maybe get a third team involved where you get a younger player back or something like that. And it's at this point that I landed on Miami. So we've been far down the list now. Miami, I'm asking for Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, or a Victor Oladipo sign and trade, your 2023 first rounder, your 2028 first rounder, and then swaps all the other years. Now, Tyler Herro, I actually have higher on my trade value chart than like DeAndre Hunter or even Brandon Ingram. I think that just his upside is better than those guys at this point. A little bit more unproven, but you could get him. You could sign him to an extension. He's under team control. Lowry, you could flip, I think, to a team like the Clippers for some other young picks or young players or picks or role players. I think there are teams that would want Kyle Lowry. If Jalen Brunson leaves Dallas, I would call Dallas and offer Kyle Lowry to them. Again, you could kind of split his contract up into other useful role players or picks. So that's where I'm at with Miami. And then after that, it would be Philadelphia, like Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey. That's not really doing it for me. Portland, I know Damian Lillard wants to pair with Durant, but Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe picks, like that's not really doing it for me if I'm Brooklyn. But here's the bottom line. Is like I said, it took us a while on that list. And I ordered that in order of the calls that I'm making. Now, a few of them at the top, I think those teams could really possibly say no, even for a guy like Kevin Durant. But there is a lot of deals where those teams say yes for Kevin Durant. Okay? But we also know that that's not exactly how the league works, right? That these stars tend to get where they want to go. And if Durant says Miami, there is a chance that him and Pat Riley make it happen, right? Like Kevin Durant played with Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry on Team USA. He's long been an admirer of Bam Adebayo ever since he saw Bam working out for Team USA a few years ago. If he wants to end up with the Heat, somebody like Kevin Durant and somebody like Pat Riley, you know they're going to do their best to make it happen. Now, I think Brooklyn would ask for Bam Adebayo from Miami. Okay? A Bam Adebayo package is much higher on that list. I don't know that the Heat do that. I don't know that the Heat trade Bam Adebayo for Kevin Durant. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, but if building around Kevin Durant and Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, that's definitely a contender. But you've now given up your best young player. And I don't know that Kevin Durant wants to play for the Heat without Bam Adebayo. I think it would be Kevin Durant's preference for them to try to figure out something that works where Bam is able to stay in Miami. It doesn't mean that would happen. I think that if, like Bam Adebayo, the Heat love Bam Adebayo, but if Brooklyn asks for Bam Adebayo and Duncan Robinson and all the picks or whatever it is, you have to have a meeting about that if you're the Heat. I don't know what they would do. I have no sense on it. But obviously they would rather keep Bam and trade Tyler Herro and even Kyle Lowry and pair Kevin Durant with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I don't know that that's doable. But I also know that this isn't exactly how things work in the NBA. That Brooklyn's front office would want one thing, Kevin Durant would want another thing, and maybe you somehow meet somewhere in the middle of this, where Brooklyn doesn't maybe get the best offer, but they get a really good offer. I don't know. I have no idea, right? I still think that at the end of the day, it's not very likely that the Miami Heat are able to get Kevin Durant, considering how many teams are going to be going after Kevin Durant. But I've been surprised before, man, and I'm not going to rule anything out. Coming up next, we'll talk about why it looks less and less likely that the Heat will bring back PJ Tucker, and if there's anything that they could do to bring him back at this point. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Rock Auto. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and prices are reliably low for every customer. To have everything they have everything you could possibly need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and then write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" box so we know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right, back here with Locked On Heat, quickly hitting the latest on PJ Tucker. Marc Stein's latest Substack report, he wrote, quote, "Numerous rival teams, meanwhile, say that even with more conviction now than they did last week when I first reported on Wednesday, that they expect PJ Tucker to land in Philadelphia on a 3-year, $30 million deal in free agency. If Pat Riley's Heat can find a way now to re-sign Tucker, they will definitely surprise some people. It seems increasingly safe then, to at least pencil in a Harden-Tucker reunion into a Sixers offseason." Not a great look, not a great report for the Heat. And I think a lot of people are wondering what's going on here. So PJ Tucker wants more years and he wants more money now that he's a free agent. He's coming off of a big year. He had a player option. He's opted out. He's going to be a free agent, or he will officially opt out by Wednesday. He'll be a free agent. He's looking for multiple years, $10 million a year. Philadelphia has been out here for a long time as a suitor. That's a name that I've heard even during the season as a potential landing spot for PJ Tucker if he wasn't going to come back to Miami. But the feeling around the Heat all along was that they always wanted PJ Tucker back. And by the way, they do want PJ Tucker back. All that stuff you heard, Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, all the things that they said in their end of season press conferences, hyping up PJ Tucker, shining him up a little bit, that was strategic, okay? That was purposely, publicly letting PJ Tucker know, hey man, we love you and we want you back really bad. Because they always knew that there was a chance that he would opt out. They figured he would opt out. But there was always a chance that he could leave because they only have his early bird rights. The best that they can offer him, because they're operating over the salary cap, is $8.4 million. So about a $1 million raise per year. They can give him $8.4 million over 3 years. But if Philadelphia's coming in here with $10 million over 3 years, that's a better offer. PJ Tucker, despite being in the league for a long time, he's played in Europe a lot, has never gotten a huge contract. Not a guy who's made as much money as a guy you would think has made, given how long he's played in the NBA. And so this is something that really does matter to him. And this is probably, by the way, his last contract, right? His last real big contract for sure. Last chance at making $10 million a year, absolutely. So the other thing the Heat can do is if they want to get to $10 million a year, they'd have to use basically their full mid-level exception at $10.3 million to beat Philadelphia's offer. But by doing that, they hard cap themselves, okay? So if you use that full MLE, you're going to be hard capped. Now, the issue with that is the Heat don't really know what their offseason is going to look like, and if they need to operate over that hard cap, which is around $155 million total salary cap for your roster. Depending on what happens with Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, Kyrie Irving, all these moving pieces, the Heat don't know if they're going to have to operate over the cap. Over the hard cap, sorry. So to hard cap yourself now for a guy we all like in PJ Tucker, but also recognize that you don't hard cap yourself also for a guy like PJ Tucker. To do that and blow any chance you potentially might have at a guy like Kevin Durant or filling out a roster around him, whatever it might be, just doesn't make sense for Miami right now. So for Miami, what you're hoping happens here is that when free agency opens, that PJ Tucker doesn't automatically right away sign that deal with Philadelphia for 3 years, $30 million. You're hoping that PJ Tucker will remain patient. Your message to PJ Tucker, if you're the Heat's front office right now, is, hey, look, we want to take care of you. We really do. We just don't know what we can offer you yet because we're operating over the cap, because we don't have your bird rights, because this is what we're limited to offering you with your early bird rights, and because we don't know if we can afford to be hard capped right now. So please remain patient. And if you do, there's a chance that you could come back to a Heat team that has Kyrie Irving on it, that maybe has Kevin Durant on it. Okay? And then at that point, would you be willing to take a little bit less? Now, if you're PJ Tucker, you say, why would I take less? I've got $30 million 3 years right here. The deal I want is right in front of me. It's on my desk waiting for me to sign. And it's not with the Sacramento Kings. It's with Philadelphia, with Joel Embiid, with James Harden, right? I think people are a little bit low on Philadelphia considering how embarrassing it was that the Heat beat them as badly as they did, but still a team with an MVP candidate on it. Still a legit bona fide contender in the Eastern Conference. And if you're PJ Tucker, you think, hey, the thing they didn't have, a little bit of dog, the thing they didn't have last year, I bring that to the table for Philadelphia. I can help put this team over the top the way that he thought he could help get Miami over the top. So maybe, hey, I have the contract I want with a contender. Why would I be patient? And this is why in league circles, people think it's increasingly looking more and more like PJ Tucker is going to leave Miami and sign with Philadelphia. Because if you're the Heat, you want PJ back, but you're just limited as to what you can offer him right now. And for PJ, the offer you want and to remain in the title conversation, that's all right there. It's on your desk right now. And you could sign that deal as soon as the moratorium is over at the beginning of July. You don't have to wait on anything. And there's no risk involved because if you wait, if you're PJ Tucker, Philadelphia can pull the offer, right? They can go in another direction. Philadelphia doesn't care what Miami's doing. They want to fill out their roster as soon as they can. So, and if there's a risk of PJ leaving, then they're not going to risk having other free agents sign elsewhere and then being left with no PJ Tucker and no other solution at power forward. So, just because it's a timing thing here. It's a timing thing here with PJ Tucker and the Heat. So, yeah, it doesn't look great. But if the Heat can figure out all this stuff before the moratorium is closed, then there's still an opportunity. There's still a chance that PJ Tucker could be back on the Heat. So I won't rule it out, but based on what we know now, it makes the most sense for PJ to go ahead and sign in Philadelphia. And for the Heat, not to offer him the most that they can offer because it doesn't make sense to hard cap themselves right now. That'll do it for us today. Remember to like and subscribe to Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Comment and leave a 5-star rating. Reach us on Twitter at Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg. We'll be back later today with the latest of Nikola Jovic's press conference. We'll talk to Jovic, Pat Riley. We've got more rookie stuff throughout the week. We've got more free agency stuff. We've got more on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant throughout the week. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks for listening.